Hey, Fatheads, welcome to another episode of Sharing Our Pairings. This is Sharing Our Pairings, episode 106, Oktoberfest in May. I'm your host, John the Cigar Surgeon. Sharing Our Pairings broadcast around the world, picked up on the Armed Forces Radio Network, and of course broadcast live on YouTube, possibly in Facebook, although we're having some technical challenges before the show, so no guarantee it's working. I apologize in advance. Anyone trying to listen on Facebook, you have to switch over to YouTube, unfortunately. Sharing Our Pairings is brought to you and sponsored by Gurkha Cigars. I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Trippy Trent. Trippy, what's going on this sunny Wednesday night?
Oh, it's just gorgeous here. It's like 72 degrees or so. I'm in a t-shirt for the first time on the show in many, many months. We are live on Facebook, regardless of the technical issues. Turns out we're live anyway.
So some technical shenanigans, because one of the, as everyone who's followed me as a host on Cigar Chat or Sharing Our Pairings knows, I'm a pretty technical guy. I like to make sure that my T's are dotted, my I's are crossed, and that everything works prior to the show. And the video was not showing, was not feeding back that it was working prior to the show, but I'm glad to hear that it is working because, I'm excited to share tonight's show with all of our Facebook listeners and viewers.
Yeah, me too. It's always nerve-wracking when there's technical issues like that, and we like being live on Facebook. People like watching us on Facebook.
It's true. We like the comments, we like the likes, we like the emoticons. Now, of course, if you are listening on YouTube, please give us a thumbs up, subscribe to our channel. If you're listening on Facebook, feel free to give us some, the various emoticons, the loves, the gasps, the angry faces, whatever you feel like. We're kind of
some of those sweet comments.
We do like sweet comments, and we do appreciate sweet comments for the show. It gives us something to do other than just talk shenanigans and fill for the rest of the show. But Sharing Our Pairings is a show where we are dedicated since 2014, coming up on our 3-year anniversary, dedicated to pairing cigars with beverages. Although not always. We did a cheese and chocolate show, but tonight we're pairing beers because it's Oktoberfest in May. In May. I really can't think of a better time to have Oktoberfest, frankly.
Me neither. I think it's actually better beer weather than October, usually, right? At least.
Certainly for me. I mean, it's in the low 70s freedom unit right now, which is low 20s for our science unit listeners out there. But it's perfect. It's perfect weather. I mean, it could be warmer, but I'm in a t-shirt. I'm comfortable. Really, what more could I ask?
Yeah, exactly. Even at like the mid 70s, if I'm sitting out on the patio and in the sun, it gets real hot real fast. So,
talking about what we're pairing tonight, because it is a special show, we are pairing the Quesada Oktoberfest. This is the 2016, because the 2017 isn't out yet. It's not Oktoberfest yet, guys. Hold your horses. It's the 2016 release, and we're smoking, hold that up, we're smoking the Blue Band, otherwise known as the Dominican release. If you want to know what the difference is, the easy way to tell is the Red Band is the Nicaraguan release, which, I'm a huge fan of Nicaraguan tobacco. I'm a huge fan of Nicaraguan cigars. I don't think that's a secret. Everyone knows that. So we'll definitely be doing that at a future show for sure. We'll definitely be doing a review. But tonight we're sticking with the classic. We're going with the Dominican because, Quesada is a Dominican company at its heart.
That's right. And I'm smoking the same cigar, but in a different Vitola than you. I think you have like the Robusto or the Toro, it looks like. I've got, I think they call it Das Boot. It's this little torpedo, got a nice flat box press.
Correct, sir. And I am smoking the Bavarian, which the specs on this bad boy, it's a 5.5 by 52, so a little bit of a Robusto extra. It's 0 over 5 inches, guys. It's a Robusto extra. I know it says Robusto, but come on, let's not fiddle around. The MSRP in these is super reasonable. It's $7.95. I mean, that's approachable, very approachable. I think.
That's not a bad price at all.
A little bit about this cigar. Made in the Dominican. The wrapper is Dominican, and the binder comes from the Cibao Valley. I don't know where that is, but it's listed on the website. You can check that out. We've got a link to it on our show page. For filler, it's Cuban Seed Criollo and Alora Vito. or pardon me, Criollo seed. Well, I've got all my notes backwards here, but it's a Loravito Ligero. So it's pretty good so far. I mean, I haven't actually smoked one of these yet. This is the first time I'm cracking it, and I figured, the perfect time to be cracking this is with a beer, and we've got a pretty good lineup of beers tonight. Do you have any specs on MSRP on your boot?
The MSRP on this one is $8.75.
Now, is that the box press?
Yeah, it's kind of got a flat box press, so it's a little wider than it is deep.
Shape. I mean, I'm a huge fan of box presses. I like that it takes a larger ring gauge and just sits it more comfortably in your mouth. I'm a huge fan of that.
I agree. Not as much for torpedoes. I don't think it's quite as necessary for torpedoes, but for Parejos, it's I really like that kind of flat box press shape.
And it's starting out. So we've had the keg, which was released earlier in the year. We've had the keg featured on the show before, and I'd say it's definitely much more nuanced and subdued than the keg. Mm-hmm. The keg was kind of a little firecracker. So I might have, based on my first quarter inch of cigar here, I may have gone way overboard in terms of strength level for my pairings tonight. I think you might have the right idea.
I think you're probably right. For people who haven't looked at our pairings yet, we'll get to that, but we'll start off by saying that we went in kind of a different direction from each other.
Which is kind of funny because we obviously we're pairing with beer. It's kind of a no-brainer. It's a Quesada Oktoberfest meant to be paired with beer, and we want to keep within that spirit. But we really talk about the style of beer that we're going to go with. I know last year Robbie and I went with sort of very classic Oktoberfest style beers, and I think you kind of stuck within that theme, didn't you?
Yeah, I went with all Bavarian and German style beers.
And conversely, I completely went away from that 100%. I went with porters and stouts exclusively, and they're all, I was going to say American, but that's not true, because one of them is from Canada, actually locally here in Calgary. But yeah, it's very, very huge departure because my beers are really going to be that toasted porter / stout quality, and your beers are going to be a little bit more nuanced, maybe some citrus quality. Yeah. And I think I might have really missed my mark here in terms of strength because, again, so far, and this cigar could pick up in intensity, but so far the 2016 Oktoberfest is quite nuanced. It's nice. It's really good, but it's it might not meet the strength of the beers that I've chosen tonight.
Yeah, I'm really liking it so far. It's got a little bit of sweetness, just a kind of a hint of like baking spice with a tiny bit of black pepper. But it's mostly kind of leathery, fruity sweetness.
So I'm definitely getting the leather, especially in the post draw. Until you said pepper, I wasn't really picking it up until I do a retro. So I'm getting the pepper on the retro. One of the things that I kind of like on this wrapper, and I don't know if this makes me a weirdo or not, but it's like toothy. It's really toothy. It's got a whole bunch of like toothy bits, and I kind of dig that. To me, it's that just screams handmade product to me. Premium handmade product.
Yeah, I didn't really notice before, but it really does have like almost microscopic like tooth specks.
Mm-hmm.
Can't really feel them, but they're definitely there.
And it's got the secondary band, which I think is actually new this year, denoting the year, which is helpful, especially if you have because it is switched over to an annual release now. So prior was kind of a limited. They weren't sure whether it was going to continue year over year, and I think they've made a statement that this is going to be an ongoing release every year, which I think is awesome. They introduced some new size this year, which yours is, I think, one of the newer sizes. And they switched the packaging up to kind of make it cool. They've got a beer house packaging available. The Bavarian's available in a 20-count box, which is reasonable. It keeps the price down if you're looking to pick up a box. I just like the whole idea of it is just kind of a cool, from the ground approach up, a pure beer pairing cigar. I like the whole concept, really.
Yeah, me too. It's I think a lot of people generally pair with beers. Pair their cigars, of course, with beer. But there aren't many cigars out there that are kind of specifically designed to match up with a beer. Typically, people just pair with beers because they like beer.
Yeah, and I would say, 3 years ago when we started the show, there really wasn't pairing at all. I mean, there was some really small examples of that. Quesada was one of the first companies that really started to go down that route of a themed cigar. And it's not, and I'm remiss to say call it a themed cigar because it really isn't. Like, themed cigar kind of implies that the cigar is somehow lacking, and it's not a lacking cigar. It's a premium product that just happens to be designed so you can pair with beer. You don't have to, but sometimes the experience is better by pairing, which is the whole reason we have this show in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Do we have any audience questions to kick it off before we get into our pairings here?
It doesn't look like we have any yet. As you know, Facebook can be kind of it can be a little opaque when it comes to comments. So I don't always see the comments for a few minutes.
Copy that. All right. Well, we'll just hop right into it because we do have our first advertising break in about 4 minutes here, but we'll get right into it.
Yeah, let's talk about our first pairings.
Roger that. So first pairing of the night here is something from Mikkeller. Now, Mikkeller is no stranger to this show. We've featured Mikkeller on a number of occasions, way many occasions, and this is the Crooked Moon Tattoo Stockholm. And for those who are viewing from home live, you can see it's kind of a funky, weird. It's got like a fox with a cap on it, and it looks like he's eating a radish or an onion with brains, and there's a whole bunch of like symbols on it. I mean, it's funky, and my experience with Mikkeller has kind of been hit or miss. Some of them are good, some of them not so good. This is definitely a stout. You can see it's got that thick, viscous color to it. It's holding onto the glass well. It's got a nice head. The carbonation's decent. And I'll talk about Mikkeller right after you introduce your first beer of the night.
Sure. So my first one is from pFriem, which we've had before. I've talked about them several times at least 2 or 3 times. But they're local to me in Hood River, Oregon, founded in 2012, and this is their Helles Lager. It is 20 IBUs and 5.3% alcohol by volume. And Helles Lager is an interesting style that's kind of a light on hops with a sweeter finish than something like a Pilsner. Pilsners tend to have a little more hops and have kind of a crisp, dry finish, and this has a little bit of a sweeter character than something like a Pilsner.
That sounds delightful, frankly.
But it looks kind of like a Pilsner.
It does look like a Pilsner. It's
just yellow. It looks like macro brew beer. But once you taste it, it's different.
Getting back to my beer, and we've talked about this at length, Mikkeller isn't actually a brewery. They're what's called a cuckoo or phantom brewery, which means that they don't actually have a brewery. They work with other brewers to produce their product, which is kind of cool. They come up and, we've got lots of examples in the cigar industry of that. There's a lot of cigar manufacturers that do not own a factory because that stuff's expensive. So they work with other manufacturers to produce the product. So totally normal in the cigar industry, but it is increasing in the beer industry where you're seeing a lot more of this phantom brew style. They were founded in 2006. Their home is Mikkeller Bar in Copenhagen. They own the bar, and that's kind of where their home is. And a little bit of the Crooked Moon Stout Stockholm. It is an American-style stout. It is 8% ABV, and a beer advocate rating of 87. What's interesting about this is they say it's brewed with figs.
Figs? That's interesting.
I've never had a beer brewed with figs before, but it's kind of nice. It's kind of it's definitely figgy, but like a lot of the pumpkin ales we've had before, this is a good example of where the fig is maybe a little understated, which is probably a good thing. But it adds that nice figgy quality, which I think goes well with stouts.
Yeah, I could definitely see that working together. Mine, like I said, it's got that Helles Lager flavor. It's kind of it's crisp with the hops up front, and then it's just kind of sweet and malty backbone. That's very easy drinking and smooth. And I think it goes pretty well with the cigar.
I'm going to talk about my pairing in just a minute here, but we're right up against it for a break. And I want to remind our audience you are tuning into Sharing Our Pairings, episode 106, Oktoberfest in May. I'm your host, John the Cigar Surgeon, joined as always by my co-host, Trippy Trent. We are broadcast live around the world, picked up on the Armed Forces Radio Network, and of course, broadcast live on cigarfederation.com and youtube.com. And we haven't forgotten about all you podcast listeners out there who are listening in droves all over the world. I do get to see the country codes, and we've got a diverse listener base around the world. We appreciate all of that. Stay tuned for a word from one of our sponsors. Sharing Our Pairings is brought to you by Gurkha Cigars. Gurkha Cigars, makers of the world's finest cigars. Try the 93 rated Heritage featuring a Rosado, Ecuadorian Habano wrapper, Nicaraguan binder, and Dominican, Pennsylvanian, and Nicaraguan fillers. Blended by Gurkha's blending team at American Caribbean Cigars, it is hand-rolled Nicaraguan, available in 35-count boxes. Talk to your local B&M about the Heritage today, or talk to them about other fine Gurkha cigars. Whatever your taste preference is, Gurkha has a cigar that's right for you. Sharing Our Pairings is back, and of course we're pairing with some tasty beers because it is Oktoberfest in May. We're doing this delicious Oktoberfest 2016. This is the Dominican Republic version, as denoted by the blue band. And that leather note we were kind of talking at the beginning of the show, that leather note has really kicked up for me.
Oh, yeah.
And I would say I honestly can't remember the last time I've had a Dominican cigar that was this leathery. Normally I get that out of Nicaraguan cigars.
Yeah, me too. But Nicaraguan cigars tend to be a more spicy kind of leather, and this is kind of a almost candy sweet kind of leather for me.
Mm-hmm. So I was talking before our break there. I wasn't sure whether this beer or these beers were going to go well with the cigar, and you know what? It does. The fig is interesting. The even though it's a stout, and even though it's what did I say? 8%. 8%, yeah, it's 8% ABV. It's not running over the cigar, which is really a testament to the blend of the cigar. So what ends up happening is the leather that's in that cigar is really supercharging the fig note. So that fig note is now standing out as I take a puff of the cigar. And I'm getting a lot more sweetness out of the cigar after I take a sip of the beer and kind of let it go through my palate. So the cigar, I'm not really getting a lot of sweetness when I draw on it, like just as I'm normally drawing on it without sipping. But the moment I'm done taking a sip and take a draw, I mean, there's a lot of sweetness coming off of this cigar.
Yeah, I really think I really get a lot of sweetness off of it. And that brings me actually to an audience question from Harley Holmes. You'll be able to answer this. I will not be able to. What differences do you notice between the different years of the Oktoberfest? Because I've only had a couple of the 2016s. I missed out on the 2015 entirely.
Well, that's really a question for Terrence because he's the expert on the blends. But and really, we got to have Terrence on for the next Oktoberfest show. I think when we do the Nicaraguan, because Terrence loves his beers. And for those who don't know who I'm talking about Terrence Riley, who is the nephew of Manolo, who owns the factory. And Terrence, was kind of a big part of this whole Quesada keg and Oktoberfest style of packaging and design. He really helped drive that concept. But getting back to the original question, thanks for the question, Harley. We do appreciate it. I would say that year over year, I think the flavor profile has been getting a little bit more intense. I think the 2015 was Terrence's favorite. I think I recall him saying that. But I would say that the intensity of both the keg and the Quesada Oktoberfest is really picking up in intensity. Again, this is kind of my first one, so it's tough for me to kind of compare and say, the notes in the 2016 are X compared to the notes in the 2015, which are Y. So I am looking forward to doing a true review where I sit down and really concentrate on the notes of the cigar without a beer there to distract. But yeah, I would say at its core, I think the strength level in terms of the flavor, the strength level of the flavor is picking up. And maybe that's just an indication of people are pairing it with stronger and stronger beers, and the cigar maybe needs to pick up in strength to keep that and not be run over by those beers. But I could be talking completely out of my butt. Who knows?
That makes sense. I know that with the new keg that came out this year, the 2017, I know that they specifically said they ramped up the strength on that one considerably.
the trend in the market has really been for stronger and stronger cigars. And again, talking about strength, I'm talking about flavor intensity, not nicotine strength, because I would not classify this Quesada Oktoberfest as having a lot of strength in terms of nicotine strength. I would actually put this as really a light medium.
Yeah, just on the minus side of medium.
Yeah, just on the minus side of medium, but the flavor profile is definitely in the medium full category, which is nice because you can get a full flavored cigar without sort of knocking you over in terms of nicotine strength. And I think that's kind of true of all the Quesada offerings. They've got this really great range of, everything from the Fonseca all the way up, where the Fonseca is kind of light, very easy to smoke. And then you can get into the Quesada series, which is just like 100% full flavored cigars. And then you've got the keg and you've got the Oktoberfest. There's a lot of offerings. And of course, the Casa Magna, which is kind of full across the board. And I was looking at my humidor the other day, and I still have like a 7 of Casa Magnas from, I think they go back 3 years now. And I break them out and, get out my whiskey every once in a while and pair them up.
Ooh, that sounds like a good combination.
So far, I don't know what your feelings are on this first pairing, because we are going very dramatically different pairings, but I'm impressed. I'm impressed because I wasn't sure this was going to work out. I'm not blown away necessarily by this pairing. I don't know that this stoutness does a huge amount for this cigar, but it's not a bad pairing. I mean, I'm enjoying myself for sure.
I already feel like this might be my favorite pairing of the night, just because the other beers that I have are more German style than this. More traditional German, and that's just generally not my bag. It's typically a little too sweet for me, but I'll give it a try anyway for the edification of the show.
So that was actually going to be my next question, because I know we've talked beers in the past, but do you typically go out and pick up a Hefeweizen or a Oktoberfest style of beer? Like, is that your thing? Even no, not at all.
Not usually. So the styles that I generally prefer, I would say number one is like a Goza, something that's sour but not overly sour, just because they're super refreshing. And then next would be IPA, of course, because I live on the West Coast and everybody likes IPAs. And then third would be like a barrel-aged stout. Those are my go-to styles.
It's interesting to me that you have such a diverse range. I mean, Gozas and stouts are on pretty opposite range. I mean, IPAs and stouts I can get, but Gozas and stouts are pretty far apart.
It's just that I found the niches that I like. I found the niche in sours, the niche in hops, and the niche in dark beers. And those are just mostly what I stick to. I mean, I'll buy just about anything. And like if I go to a tap house or something, I'll try just about everything that I can.
So, what would you drink on a patio if it was hot outside?
A Goza.
See, that's
I love Goza when it's hot.
That's, I mean, I don't want to, I don't want to judge another person because we've all got different beer styles. But to me, what got me on Hefeweizens and Oktoberfest style of beers, and even when you get into the farmhouse Saison styles, to me that's like those are patio beers. Do you drink Saisons at all?
Not too much, a little bit.
Really?
I don't hate them, but I just don't drink them often.
You just don't drink them. But so far, so good.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I'm going to hop into my second beer here tonight. It's really along the same lines of what we're already talking about. This is from Ribstone Creek Brewery. They got a really cool can. Very Western, very Albertan. It's kind of got that maybe understated look to it with some. It's kind of got the cool. Yeah. The can's got the cool old man winter in the back, but they're all located in can't even talk tonight. Edgerton. It's a tough one for me
to say.
No, Edgerton, Alberta, and they were established in 2009. Started up by Don Pear, Cal Hawks, Chris Fraser, and Alvin Gordon. And really, they got into it not knowing anything about brewing, which is not normally that's not normally how the start of a brewery tale starts. They don't normally say, yeah, we didn't know anything. We just decided to kick off a brewery. Normally they say they're home brewers or something like that, or got their apprenticeship or something like that. So this is kind of cool. But they have been in since 2009. They make great beer. I'm going to hold that up there. Again, very along the lines of the first beer I started out with, but you can see it's a little bit thinner. Doesn't really have the same head quality in terms of thickness. So, very in the porter quality, what you'd expect. Beer Advocate score of 85, which I kind of feel is a bit low. It kind of reflects that maybe this beer is really limited to Alberta and, people outside of Alberta are just not drinking it. 6.6% ABV. I'm going to read the description because it's kind of a cool one. They say it's a robust dark brown porter with pronounced chocolate and roasted coffee notes. It's balanced by a light caramel sweetness with a fruity and roasted aroma on the nose. This 6.6 well-bodied brew is the perfect companion for a cold winter night. Well, that doesn't describe this night at all, does it?
Not even a little bit.
Not even a little bit. I definitely get a lot of the caramel notes on the nose. It kind of reminds me of those Werther's candies, which I love.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very Werther's-y. I'm going to take some sips here and let you talk a little bit about your second beer of the night.
All right, so I've got an interesting one. It is from Weihenstephaner. I took German class in high school, but I do not know how to pronounce this one.
It's a long word.
I'm going to go Weihenstephaner.
Yeah.
And guess that's it.
Close enough.
But this is their Hef Dunkel, which basically means that it's a dark, unfiltered wheat beer. They have a very interesting history. They claim to be, at least, the oldest brewery in the world. They first started as a monastery in Weihenstephaner in 725. That's the year 725 AD.
I don't know if you're aware of this or not, Trippy, but that's a long time ago.
That's a real long time ago. Then the Turkish actually completely destroyed the monastery in the year 955. They rebuilt it, and in 1040, Abbot Arnold was granted a license to brew and sell beer for the first time by the Bavarian government, or whatever the government was in place at that time, at least. And then, between the years of 1085 and 1463, the brewery/monastery burned down entirely 4 times. They were struck by 3 plagues, and what on the website is only described as the Great Earthquake. I'm not sure about that. And then
I'd just like to interject. I'm not a religious man, but it's a monastery. You'd think they might be taking that as a sign of bad things.
Yeah, I would have thought that would have been like, this is a bad omen. We should stop making beer, but they did not. They have made beer. Except for, I'm assuming, the periods where they were rebuilding, they've been making beer for over 1,000 years.
That's a long time, Trippy. 1,000 years is a very long time.
They've been licensed to make beer for almost 1,000 years, which is, that's just kind of mind-blowing.
Can I just comment on how absurd it is that in 1040 you need a license to brew?
Yeah, exactly.
Government was getting their thumbs in that bucket pretty early on at 1040.
Well, so now they're actually owned by the government because I didn't note what year it was because I didn't want to go on and on about their story, but there was a period of secularism in Bavaria where the government took control of all the monasteries, and for this one they just kept control of it over the years, and so now it's the Bavarian state brewery. So this Dunkel clocks in at a whopping 14 IBUs. There's not a lot of hops in here.
Nope.
And it's a mere 5.3% ABV. So it's, it should be an easy drinking beer.
Can I just say that a dark unfiltered wheat beer is probably one of my top 5, maybe even top 3 favorite styles? Really? Yeah. I
find
really
it a little
dig
too
it.
malty for me.
See, that's what I love. I love that rich malty character, and I think the unfiltered piece, I don't know, it just gives it a great mouthfeel. It's, again, I think, when I think sitting out on a patio having a burger, that's my go-to beer every single time.
Okay.
Oh.
I think more of a just about anything that's in the realm of this color. Anything yellow. Whether it's an IPA or a Goza or a Pilsner even. or a lager. I like lighter colored beers when it's hot out.
Makes sense. I mean, normally lighter beers are kind of, low ABV, kind of associated with being a bit more refreshing, a little crisp. Yeah. Makes sense. I do want to remind our audience, though, that they are tuned in sharing our Pairings episode 106. Oktoberfest in May, and this is broadcast live around the world, picked up on the Armed Forces Radio Network, and of course broadcast on Facebook Live, which seems to be working. Broadcast on YouTube, and of course cigarfederation.com, which is where we're housed. The show is sponsored by Gurkha Cigars, makers of the world's finest cigars. Go down and talk to your local B&M about the Heritage or the Heritage Maduro. The Heritage was rated 93. That's a pretty good score. That's normally a high score for Cigar Federation too. So check that out. Talk to your local B&M. They'll find the cigar that's right for you. And of course, I got to give lots of love out to our podcast listeners. I see you guys listening in droves all the time. We see country codes all over the world, all over Europe. We've got guys tuning in from South Africa, got guys tuning in from South America, Central America, all of the states, of course. And we appreciate that love and that support. You guys are out there listening. You guys and gals are out there listening, and we appreciate that love. It's good to know that all of our tomfoolery and shenanigans are appreciated. You can, of course, go onto Facebook and leave a comment. You can go to cigarfederation.com and leave a comment. Speaking of, do we have any, before we get in too further into our second beer of the night here, do we have any questions? Trippy comments, questions?
No, the audience is pretty quiet tonight. Donald Kozero says he homebrews some Czech Pilsner, which sounds pretty good.
Don's been a long-time member of Cigar Federation.
And actually, that's something I skipped over for the Helles Lager. So Helles Lager came from the German beer companies, Munich-based breweries mainly. They were worried because I think it was the mid-1800s when Czech Pilsner became like the big thing. Everybody wanted Czech Pilsner. And Helles Lager was their answer to Czech Pilsner.
Interesting.
It's kind of the German version of a Czech Pilsner. And, now everything is kind of commingled together. So there are German Pilsners. But back then, they wanted to get people drinking German beer.
Makes sense. Especially we're talking about Weihenstephaner there, brewing since the 700s. That's a long time.
That's a long, long time ago.
Now, I'm kind of getting into the middle-ish third of the cigar, and it is sharply picked up in intensity. Mm-hmm. I'm getting a little bit more white pepper, actually, not a black pepper. A little bit of nuttiness. Leather's fading a little bit, which is probably for the best because the leather was getting pretty intense for me. It's got a nice undercurrent of creaminess, which I think is the cigar, not the beers. But, once again, Quesada making an excellent product.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with any of those points, or with all of those points. You're right on the head. It's white pepper. The leatheriness is really kind of smoothing out, and there's some of that creaminess coming in.
So I'm going to take some more sips here on my beer, kind of get situated. I think this Ribstone Creek Brewery porter is going a little bit better with the cigar because it's a little less intense than the stout was. Kind of in the realm of what I was aiming for when I was thinking porters. And porters tend to be certainly more, shall we say, palate friendly than stouts. They're not going to take your palate over. And, I think if you are going to pair, like I have with the darker beers, you probably want to stick away from the stouts. The stouts might be the right way to go with the Nicaraguan. We don't know. We'll find out. But I think in terms of this, the way this Dominican is smoking so far, I think you probably want to stick around the porter level of intensity. That's probably about right. I'm going to take some sips here and let you talk about how that second pairing of the night is going for you.
So I think the dark Hefeweizen is a little too sweet and malty and kind of not a bright enough flavor to go along with this. Yeah. So I think so far the Helles Lager goes a little better than this one. Not that it's a bad beer. I think it just doesn't play well with the flavors of this cigar.
I mean, I can understand that because what I'm liking about this porter is that it isn't very, because you can have a porter or a stout that's really malt forward, very sweet. It's not like that at all. It's very subdued. In fact, I'd almost say I enjoy this beer more paired with the cigar than I do on its own, because I think as a beer on its own, I think when I picked it up, I was kind of expecting it to be maybe a little bit more caramel forward. But it's balanced, which is nice, but none of the flavors are really spiking on me. So I'm not getting overly espresso flavors. I'm not getting overly malty flavors. I'm not, again, everything's kind of nuanced and balanced. And that really makes sense when you're talking about a cigar that's, for the most part, nuanced and balanced and isn't kicking you in the teeth. Kind of like the Quesada Keg, which was, a little bit more, a little bit heavier, a little bit spicier, a little bit stronger. This is nice, and I think this second pairing of the night might end up being my favorite, but who's to know, because I got a sleeper hit for my third one tonight.
All right, what's that one?
Well, I'm going to get into it. It is Oskar Blues, and how can you say no to Oskar Blues? What shocked me is that I haven't featured this on the show before. They call it the Wake and Roast Hotbox Coffee Porter. No, it's not 420. It's just Hotbox and coffee. Don't get any weird ideas. Pack it in, pack it out. It's I've had this many times. It's very good. I don't think Oskar Blues makes bad beer, frankly. I don't think they're actually capable of making bad beer. And again, very along the lines of what we saw with the Old Man Winter Porter from Ribstone, where it's a very porter-esque look to it. The viscousness of it is not very thick. It's not got an overly big head like you would see in a stout. You look at it and you go, yep, that's a porter. But you smell it, and boy, oh boy, does that ever kick off just a ton of toasted vanilla. They say creme brulee in the description. That makes sense, actually. And lots of cocoa nibs, coffee, although subdued. And, we've told the story of Oskar Blues so many times, but I'm going to tell the story of Oskar Blues again for those who are maybe tuning in for the first time. You can catch our back catalog. Oskar Blues actually started as a brew pub in Lyons, Colorado, all the way back in 1997. They're one of the first craft breweries to use cans. So back in the day, it was all glass bottles. No one thought that putting beer in cans was cool, probably because it was associated with big beer companies, and no one wanted to be associated with big beer companies. But they distributed it in cans because they felt the beer was kept fresher, and there was an environmental aspect to it. They felt that cans are a little bit easier to recycle than glass bottles, and they're more portable, which makes sense because if you drop a can, the worst case scenario is the can bursts open, you spill some beer, and life sucks. Drop a bottle, now you've got a mess, you got to sweep it up, maybe somebody cuts their feet, bad times. So that all makes sense to me. Now, the brewery itself actually kicked off in 2002 in Colorado, obviously, and then they expanded later on to add a new brewery in North Carolina and one in Austin, Texas, as their popularity grew, and they're continuing to grow and grow and grow. The fact that we've got them on the show probably every other episode when we have beers is a pretty clear indication of just how popular they are. This is a Beer Advocate rated 88 beer. So all the beers tonight are kind of in that 85 to 90 range. This is a beer, again, that I think maybe a little underrated because of its style. I think porters might be a little underrated in a Beer Advocate, but 6.4% ABV, which is kind of exactly where you'd expect a porter to be. 30 IBUs. And they say it's based on the malted flavors of roasted nuts, creme brulee, cocoa, and caramel, extracted from English and German roasted and caramel malts. Now, they don't tell me what those malts are. They keep that to themselves, but, some of you out there might be able to guess. They say that Hotbox roasters then crash the party and infuse potent, cold extracted coffee from Burundi and Ethiopian beans, which I'm a huge fan of Ethiopian coffee. Huge fan.
And Ethiopian makes great cold brew, which obviously they used in that.
Because I think it's got, and we're going to coffee geek out here for a second, but because I think it's got low acidity and a really high fruit quality content to it. It's a really bright coffee to me, which I dig. And yeah.
And cold brewing, of course, cuts down on any level of acidity. So low acidity means it's even kind of sweeter when it's cold brewed.
Mm-hmm.
And those fruity flavors just work beautifully in cold brew.
Yeah, they really pop. So for those of you out there who are, I know this isn't the coffee show, but might as well be, if for those of you out there doing cold brew, If you don't really like coffee, try a cold brew. Not a Starbucks, but normal iced cold brew. You might find that the coffee is a little bit more palatable for you than something else, because again, that acidity level goes way down, and it's awesome. But they say it brings out aromas of dark plums, chocolate, and hints of blueberry. I do get blueberry a lot in Ethiopian coffee. It is very, very bright, fruity coffee. Again, talking about the nose here, I think the nose has a lot more going on than the flavor profile. The nose maybe gives you a sense it's a little bit more intense than it actually is, because it's really along the same lines of intensity of the Old Man Porter that I just had, Old Man Winter. It's got a nice mouthfeel. Kind of finishes with a little bit of caramel. Getting hints of blueberry. Definitely that cocoa nib quality and some vanilla. So I'm going to take some sips, take some puffs, and kind of muddle it over my brain while you talk about your third and final pairing of the night yourself, Trippy.
So my third pairing, I was talking about Munich before, and this is a Munich-made beer from Paulaner called Salvator. It's their double Bock.
Love it.
Or Doppelbock.
Doppelbock.
It looks almost exactly like the dark Hef.
Yeah, it's a little redder.
A little more red and a little bit less hazy, but not by much. And Paulaner is another old brewery, though not nearly as old as the last one. They were founded in Munich in 1634, and they have never changed the recipe for this beer. They've been using the same recipe for over 300 years, I think. Yeah. Wow. For almost 400 years.
Wow.
Yeah. It is. They don't give any information about the IBUs, though I would guess that it's very, very low. And it's a Doppelbock means a double Bock, which is a stronger version of a Bock. So this is 7.9% ABV. So it's a little bit stronger, though, not as strong as a lot of American beers that are on the market now. And right off the bat, this one's got a lot more flavor than the last one. It's kind of similar, a little bit more hops, I think, or at least a little bit more bitter from the malts, and kind of an amped up sweetness, where the last one was kind of almost bland. This one has like a punchy sweetness that's kind of fruit forward, and I think goes really well with the cigar.
Nice. And I do think this Oktoberfest is picking up in intensity as it goes. I'm smack dab in the middle now, and I'm getting a ton. That black pepper's back on the retro, like in a big way. Yeah. If I didn't know any better, I'd say it had Nicaraguan filler in it, because again, and this is probably because I just don't smoke enough Quesada. I really need to smoke more, but it's very intense for flavor. So I get a little bit of earthiness, but for the most part, the draw is very, very clean finish. Like, it doesn't have a lot of lingering. Now that leather's gone, it's not really lingering. I get just tons of pepper off the retrohale. Tons by sort of Dominican standards, not by Nicaraguan standards. So it's still, normal. It's not crazy. But it's good, and I think it's probably the timing is good, because I feel like I've stepped up in intensity for beers here, so the cigar kind of feels like it's matching that intensity, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, I actually totally agree, because this is a much stronger beer in flavor terms than the first two were. And I think the Oktoberfest stepped up right at the right moment, where it's really kind of matching that strength with the spiciness and the increased body of the cigar.
I can actually think of some other pairings that might go really well with this, and I'll talk about those in a second. But I do want to remind our audience that you are tuned in to Sharing Our Pairings, episode 106. This is Oktoberfest in May. This is Sharing Our Pairings. We are pairing the Quesada Oktoberfest 2016 Dominican release with some beers, because it's Oktoberfest. Cigar Federation does broadcast Sharing Our Pairings live around the world, and it is picked up on the Armed Forces Radio Network. Thanks to all our Armed Forces Radio Network listeners wherever you are in the world. Hope you are staying safe. Thanks to all our podcast listeners. Thanks to everyone who's tuned in live on Facebook and YouTube. Appreciate those comments, questions, thumbs, and emoticons that you're sending our way. Appreciate that love. Getting back to the pairing here. So we're just talking about the intensity of the cigar kind of going up at the same time. I actually, weirdly, think that the cigar might be running over my coffee porter here.
Wow, that's surprising.
Because I'm getting like I said, there's a lot of sweetness, but it kind of balanced out with the pepper. Sweetness lingers a little bit. Yeah, I think it's it's good. I'm enjoying it, but maybe I kind of went off little too off into left field with the pairings tonight. I don't know if this last porter is matching the intensity of the cigar, unfortunately.
I wanted to get some Marzens because obviously a Marzen is the Oktoberfest style, but they're just not in season right now, so I wasn't able to get any.
Not being made until really mid-July, late July.
Yeah, late July is typically when we start seeing them.
And normally, September, October is kind of when we do our next Quesada. And we really should have done a Quesada show late last year, but I don't know what happened. We just got too busy. Robbie jumped ship, all kinds of stuff happened.
Rob leaving us high and dry really threw a wrench in the works.
Where's the love? Where's the love, Robbie?
Speaking of Rob, who's going to be on Cigar Chat tomorrow? You remember? Oh, Mo Mali.
Mo Mali from who's distributed by Mambacho.
Patina, and he is now, I believe he's national sales manager for Mambacho now. I think that's his title. I'll have to double check, but he is now with Mambacho officially.
Nice.
So we're having some Mambacho shows pretty close to each other.
Yeah, I might have to see if I can pick up another Mambacho cigar because I've got 2 left over, but I kind of wanted to hold them for review. I mean, it's bad form to not smoke the manufacturer's cigar during the show, but
I think you just don't have enough Mambachos then.
Oh. We have 16 stores worth of Mambachos, but
that's a good point.
Even at the reasonable price up here in Canada, they're actually really reasonably priced in the market. It's still much, much higher than what you pay in the States by a lot.
Course. And even more than what you would pay if you happened to go to Granada and go to the factory.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. But we're not talking about that. We're getting off topic here. I mean, we're still talking cigars. We're getting way off topic here. So yeah, I think this last pairing is a bit of a miss for me. In a lot of ways, I kind of feel like I wish the beer was stronger, which is really strange because maybe I need to go back to my my Mikkeller Crooked Moon Tattoo Stockholm to see if, in fact, I'm going to cheat. I'm going to kind of jump back to the beginning here.
That's pretty much how I feel about porters in general. For me, porters just don't have enough flavor and body for me to want a porter more than a stout.
Yeah.
Pretty much any time.
Yeah, that's so. First of all, I agree. That's kind of true most of the time for me as well. But I got to say, after this beer's been kind of sitting for 30 minutes, good Lord, is there a lot of fig coming off of this now? Like, I actually think that this, I have my order completely backwards because I think this Crooked Moon Tattoo Stockholm should have been my last beer of the night, not my first beer of the night, because the fig coming off of it is it's almost overpowering, actually.
Wow.
It's funky though. Like, it's almost got like a tannic quality to it. Like a little bit of sourness with a little bit of tannins.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's the right pairing. At any rate, so let's go back over our pairings here and kind of talk about what we liked and what we didn't like. I'll kick it off here. So 2 attempts here at this Crooked Moon Tattoo Stockholm, which is a really interesting beer. Maybe not the right beer for this cigar. It was a Beer Advocate rated 87. That sounds about right to me. I put it mid to high 80s on its own. Quite interesting. Not sure it's the right pairing with the cigar. It started out really interesting when I started out with the cigar, but now that the cigar is kind of picking up in intensity, they're really fighting each other. I think the fig note on the beer just doesn't really line up here, and I'm really taking this cigar, I think, outside of kind of the traditional pairings for sure. I would probably rate this first pairing 83 to an 85. It's one of those pairings where I do it again if I had it, but I wouldn't really actively seek it out.
Sure. So my first pairing, the pFriem Helleslager, I think it was a very good pairing. It's not quite made for the cigar, but it does play really well with the flavors of the cigars. I would give that one, I would say a 90.
Wow.
It's very good. but there's something missing, and I can't identify what. What about your second pairing?
Going back to the Old Man Winter Porter, I kind of feel like this is the pairing of the night for me. Not because it's understated, but really because it's seems kind of match the flavor profile, or at least complement the flavor profile, kind of the way I was hoping it would go. Beer Advocate score of 85, which I really feel is quite low, and I think really just kind of speaks to maybe the category of porters, or maybe a little underrepresented or underappreciated. You know, we already just kind of talked about it, where maybe a lot of people just reach for stouts instead of porters. I think the beer does a much better job of supporting the flavor profile of the cigar. This is probably something I would do again, although again, I don't think I'm not blown away. It's not blowing my skirt up. So I would probably rate this in the 86 to 88 range, 88 being a high water mark for that pairing. I think it probably lands in really the 86, 87 mark. I would reach for it again, but I wouldn't reach for it every day. I wouldn't reach for it every week. I wouldn't necessarily actively seek it out. But definitely, I think it went better than my first beer of the night.
My second beer of the night, the Weihenstephaner. I think I'm getting better at saying that. I mean, for me, that beer just doesn't bring enough to the table to pair with a cigar. It's an okay beer on its own, but I just wouldn't really recommend pairing it with any particular cigars. So I would give that one an 82.
Okay. Well, going to my last pairing of the night here, this Hotbox coffee porter. Definitely I think matches again more the style of what I was looking for with the porter here. But it for whatever reason it just doesn't have enough oomph to it to stand up this cigar. It's tasty. I enjoy the beer on its own. Like again, we've talked about Oskar Blues. They're good. They're good, but paired with a cigar, the cigar is just a little too much. And talking about the cigar, I kind of feel like the cigar might go really well with a good Irish whiskey. Like that's kind of where my head's at. Is I feel like a really nice Irish whiskey would be tasty. But yeah, the Hotbox coffee porter, good, but just not the right combination of flavors with the cigar. So definitely higher than the Mikkeller. I'm going to put it in the smack dab in the 85, 86 range. So maybe a point or two higher. I think for me, the Old Man Winter Porter was the winner of the three, but not necessarily a huge standout by any stretch of scoring.
All right. For me, the Paulaner Salvator is really the pairing of the night. I think it's probably the closest to an Oktoberfest style that I had tonight.
Yep.
And just the sweetness and the slight hoppiness works really well with this cigar. Yeah. I would give that one a 92 easily.
That kind of matches my experience. Last year we did a bunch of, and the year before we did a bunch of pairings with Oktoberfest beers, and that Paulaner not only is a pairing with the Quesada cigars, but really is a standalone beer. Mm-hmm. I like that style. I feel like all of the flavors are kind of dialed up a little bit, but nothing is really offensive. Like the malty quality isn't too strong. It's a great beer, and I think I've still got some in my cooler actually. Now that I think about it.
Yeah, and for the Weihenstephaner, I forgot to mention it, but I think that for that one, the thing that makes it a miss for me is that it's malty but not sweet,
right?
And it's crisp but not hoppy, and it just kind of ends up being the flavors are kind of muddled because all the flavors are so toned down.
That makes sense. I mean, that's really the large complaint about porters too, is that we talk about the flavors are just too dialed down. So so for you, Paulaner was the winner of the night. For me, the Ribstone was the winner of the night. So we've got a regular scheduled cigar chat. So maybe just tell our audience when and where to tune in tomorrow night.
Tomorrow night, tune in at 8 p.m. Pacific, or 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, cigarfederation.com. You can tune in on YouTube. You can tune in on Facebook. We will have Mo Mali, National Sales Manager of Mambacho, and owner of Patina Cigars, which is the new, it started off as a project that Mambacho was making for Patina. Not quite sure how the relationship works out now, but we'll have a chance to find out tomorrow.
Indeed, we will. For all our live listeners and all our podcast listeners, don't tune out just yet. We'll have a After Dark segment coming up right after this Armed Forces Radio Network segment. But I do want to take this moment to thank all the Armed Forces Radio Network listeners out there. As we say every week, you guys are built to do things we are not built to do, and we appreciate wherever you are in the world keeping us safe. Hope you have a chance to enjoy this 58 minutes of shenanigans from us. You have a chance to light up a cigar, even better. You probably don't have a chance to light up or crack a beer, but if you do and pair it with a cigar, kudos to you. Hope you guys stay safe and have a great weekend. And as we say on Sharing Our Pairings, we want you to drink better, but drink less. And this is, of course, our After Dark segment where I just put it on our split camera and just ramble on. Just chill out, have a beer, have a cigar, let our live audience chat.
We did have one more question from Harley that I didn't get to in the
last. Oh, unbelievable.
That's all right. What non-booze drinks would go well with the Oktoberfest? I could see a cola. Like, I don't know if I would go Coke or Pepsi, but you know how they sell kind of natural colas with a K that have actual cola nut in them?
It's not super sweet or whatever?
Yeah, I feel like one of those would actually go really, really well with the cigar.
I'm going to go weird here. I'm going to go Lapsang Souchong tea. Yeah. You ever had Lapsang Souchong?
I've never actually had it, but there's a running joke in my in-laws' family where when every single time my father-in-law has a gift that he's about to open, he guesses that it's one of three things, which is a lampshade, golf clubs, or Lapsang Souchong.
Interesting.
So one year we did buy him Lapsang Souchong. I don't think anybody ever drank it. It smelled real weird.
Well, to me, it's peat in a glass. Like it's tea peat. That's what it is, right? Like it really undergoes the same kind of process because it's like fire cured, because they're taking same thing. They're taking wood chips and they're smoking out the leaves. As I understand it, the reason they're doing that is because the tea is of so low quality that in order to make it palatable, they have to do that. Laura bought it, I think, really to try it out, and partially because I was featuring it on our tea show. And she brewed it up. She took a sip and she just, curled her nose up and she's like, no good. But I
Harley's follow-up to that is, what about something us normal people can buy?
Well, Lapsang Souchong you can get at any tea shop.
I mean, you can buy it at the grocery store.
Yeah, it's pretty normal.
It's a really rough cut tea that comes in bags. Or
I mean, I could see a chai going really interesting, like being an interesting combination.
Oh, that's a good thought.
Yeah, because the spiciness, it's not overly sweet. The spiciness, that chai spice, not super spicy, but it might hyper accent some of the nuttiness and creaminess and sweetness in this cigar.
I was thinking maybe a Cuban coffee.
Oh wow!
Like a real sweet espresso. I think that would go really well with it.
It's cheating though.
But yeah, Cuban coffee is absolutely cheating.
So if you go to lanecoffee.com, who is not a sponsor of this show, by the way, Lane Coffee should be a sponsor of the show. They're friend of the show.
He's too cheap to sponsor us.
He's too cheap to sponsor us. That's Logan and Rob, by the way. Cuban coffee, even an iced coffee, actually would be a real interesting iced coffee would be good. I mean, the tough thing is when you get outside of alcoholic beverages, I mean, you really kind of fall into three categories of you got pop, you got tea, you got coffee.
Yeah, and that's about it.
That's really it. That's kind of the three beverages. I mean, you wouldn't do sweet tea. You wouldn't do any kind of juice because the acidity in the juice is going to be a little bit too much for the cigar. So it's tough with non-alcoholic beverages. I mean, I like to pair a lot of Dr. Peppers, but I feel like Dr. Pepper is just going to be...
Dr. Pepper is also cheating.
Yeah, it's cheating too. In this case, I actually think Dr. Pepper might be a bad match for this cigar. I think the sweetness off the Dr. Pepper might just kind of run this cigar right over.
Yeah, that's kind of why I went with like a natural cola kind of cola, because they're typically not as sweet. They're a little more kind of they've got that syrupy cola nut kind of flavor, even though they don't have as much sugar.
Right.
And I think that would sort of mimic a nice dark beer like the Paulaner.
Mhm. I mean, not that we have anything against non-alcoholic drinkers, because we've certainly paired our
Of course not.
fair share of non-alcoholic beverages in the show. We've had a few tea shows. We've had quite a number of pop shows. I do want to take this moment to thank some of the friends of the shows. So, one thing I should have done during our regular broadcast is, I listen to a lot of different podcasts out there on the market every day on the way to work and home. So some of the friends of the show, some of the other podcasts you really should check out. Cigar Jukebox. Dave Burke does a really interesting show where he pairs music with cigars. He just recently had Matt Booth on, which is a clinic. If you're going to check out any show, you got to check that out. It's a clinic. You should check out Stogie Geeks. You should check out Primetime Live with Coop and Aaron Loomis. That's on Thursday after Cigar Chat. You should check out the Cigar Authority. There's a lot of different shows out there. These are all excellent shows. I listen to all of them because variety is the spice of life. So I recommend you check them out as well. Support the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And I listen to all of those.
So I'm really digging this Oktoberfest. And you know me, I'm kind of a little poo poo on Dominican cigars, kind of in general.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, and I think.
They just don't do much for me for some reason.
I don't know
why. I can't identify why.
But Quesada is one of those companies that I don't think there's a single offering from Quesada that I don't enjoy. I'm going to totally screw up the name, but it's like the K to Tat, which got the bat end to it. It's a really long. It's like a 7. Yeah. So I just found one of those in my humidor, and I think it's from 2015. And I'm super excited to light that up because that was one of my favorite cigars from Quesada. I mean, it's an investment in time because, God, it takes me like 2.5 hours to smoke that thing. But fantastic cigar. Really, really enjoy it.
I don't think I've actually smoked that one. I might need to track one down and give it a shot.
It's interesting. I mean, it's good. Well, I do find that companies that tend to do Dominican cigars really well, I mean, I think that's why I enjoy them because they make a higher quality product. Maybe that's a bad way to say it. But yeah, my flavor profile, my palate just tends to gravitate away from Dominican tobacco, which is really weird because I like Cuban cigars. And Cuban cigars, a lot of the Cuban manufacturers, like Manolo Quesada, his family came from Cuba. They were manufacturing cigars in Cuba, doing brokerage in tobacco in Cuba for over 100 years. So, they were big into the tobacco industry before moving into the Dominican. But I suppose in a way that makes sense. They've got all this history of tobacco. It probably explains why I enjoy their cigars so much.
Well, so a thing that I've noticed about companies that come from Cuba is when you see a company that comes from Cuba and they go to the Dominican, they say they chose the Dominican because their tobacco is the closest to Cuban. And when you see a company or a person that goes from Cuba to Nicaragua, they say Nicaraguan tobacco is just so different from Cuban tobacco.
Very different.
Because it's just two completely different sides of the coin.
Yeah.
When Dominican is actually closer, but it's, there's obviously a difference there.
Yeah, I do find that with Dominican tobaccos, there's something in the soil or something in the way it's grown. And I think I've heard it described as a twang in Cuban tobacco. There's a particular twang in Cuban tobacco, and I enjoy Cuban cigars. But oftentimes I find that even with really great Cuban cigars, there's just not enough complexity there for me.
Yeah.
So for me,
that's exactly how I feel.
Yeah. So for me, I get into a Quesada, and part of the thing I really enjoy about it is the complexity level is just dialed way, way up.
Yeah.
It's not 11, but it's an 8 or a 9, which is fantastic. And talking about the price point of this, it's $7.95. It's perfectly within the reason. I think anytime you can bring especially a themed cigar like this, which has got some cool packaging, kind of an interesting band, if you can bring that to the market under $9, that should be pretty approachable for most cigar smokers.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, that's kind of the market now is like $7 to $9 is where the meat of the market really is.
Yeah, I think so. So we've got some interesting upcoming shows. We've got Mo on tomorrow night. I think next week we're doing is next week our Are You Not Entertained show?
Yes.
So
Gladiator edition.
the Gladiator edition. So
Yeah,
we do have
we haven't actually talked about it publicly. People know that it's called "Are You Not Entertained?" But I don't think anybody besides the two of us and our special guest know what we're actually doing.
Yeah. So some time ago, a good friend of mine, Will, sent me. I didn't know at the time whether to call it the punishment package or he just wanted to see me smoke it live on the show. But he sent me some really, really big ring age stuff. We're going to be smoking some Asylum 13s. We're smoking the Donkeys, the 6x80s, and we're going to have a special guest from the Cigar Authority, Barry Stein, who is a lover of all things whiskey and Scotch, man after my own heart. And he's gonna bring on the really cool new Asylum, which is the 7x70 box press, which I gotta say, super jelly because I feel like I'm going to talk to Asylum when we're at the show and see if I can get my hands on some of the box press. But I feel like a box press 70 ring gauge might be approachable because a non-box press 70, that's just huge, man.
I mean, it's just ridiculous.
Ridiculous.
So I think you're smoking, what is it, the 6x80? And I've got the 7x70.
Oh, that's right. You got the 7x70. Yeah, the regular 7x70, not the TAA.
Yeah, the regular 7x70. I'm thinking about swinging by the shop and seeing if they have the 6x80, just so we can all match. But
well, I think
I'll have a 70 to smoke still. So
yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting to go the gamut. I've got the 6x80, see what the performance is. You've got the 7x70. Barry's gonna have the box press. I feel like Barry's got the right end of that whole deal.
Yeah, he's got the good end of the stick.
I am a little worried. Because I do film publicly here on my patio, I'm a little worried about some of the looks I'm going to get from my neighbors. I might get some mail from the condo group about offensive or obscene cigar smoking. I'm not sure. That will be coming up.
Definitely see that.
Yeah, that will be coming up next week on Wednesday, and I think after that we're going on. So that's Wednesday, which is the 17th. And then the 24th, we're going, I think it's the Nica Rustica, which we haven't paired in. No, pardon me, that's not true. We're going Hoya de Nicaragua, Dark Antonio.
Ah, yes, okay.
Which I love. Oh, and I was shocked that we've never featured the Dark Antonio on the show before. Like, it just...
Yeah, that's really surprising.
I mean, I've smoked, 8 boxes or something like when we go down to Nicaragua, I smoke them non-stop. So I could not believe we hadn't featured on the show, and it's kind of a mainstay of the Hoya catalog. So that'll be on the 24th. Look for me to pair some really strong beverages with that. And then the 31st, we're doing the Nica Rustica, which is another cigar we've not had on Sharing Our Pairings, which I was really shocked at.
Never?
Never.
That's surprising.
It's a great cigar.
It's a great cigar. I was talking to my buddy last night about it. Actually, we were on the phone. He's in Connecticut. He was smoking one, and I was telling him just that it's just such a solid cigar.
Mm-hmm. And then on June 7th, we're going to do the Coffee Part 2.
Oh yeah,
because we did Coffee back all the way back in February of 2016. I didn't think it had been that long, but time does fly in the show. Either that or I'm blacking out after the show. I'm not sure which.
Could be either.
One of the two. Either way, we got some exciting shows coming up. So go to cigarfederation.com. You can check out the event calendar, or you can just subscribe to our podcast and get the delicious content delivered directly to your phone as it comes out every morning. I am your host, John the Cigar Surgeon. I am joined by Trippy Trent. We do appreciate you tuning into our show live, and we do want to say that, big motto here on Sharing Our Pairings is drink better, but drink less.